Today is Monday, December 7th, 2020. And our I Can says, I can identify points, lines, line segments, rays, and angles. You're going to need a pencil, your notebook, and you're going to need a straight edge. I'm going to use a Cam Jansen book because it has a very straight edge. You could use a clipboard, you could use your Eureka book, but you need to have a straight edge handy today, okay? We're going to start by talking about a point. So I want you to make a dot on your page. We're going to call it point A. I'm going to make another point on my page. Make it over here. I'm going to call this point B. A point gives you an exact location on the space. It's just one exact spot. If I was digging for buried treasure, there might be an X on the spot and I would dig right there. It tells me the location of my treasure. For this case, it tells us the location of point A, and this gives us the location of point B. So these are example of points. We have point A and point B. Now I'm going to take point and I'm going to use my Cam Jansen book and I'm going to connect it to point B. So what I do is I put my pencil on the dot and I line my book up. And then when it crosses over the other point, then I can draw my line. Now that's pretty close. I was doing it where I couldn't see, so it wasn't exact. There's A and B. A and B have now created a line segment. It's just a piece of a line because it doesn't keep going in either direction. We've made a line segment. So let's make another point. I'm going to come over here. Let's call this point C. So now I have A, B, and C. And this time I'm going to connect A and C, but this time I'm going to overlap my line so it keeps going past the point. And I'm going to put arrows at the end. Can you see why this is different than this? AB is called a line segment. A line segment. We call it AB. And I make just a little line above it, but really it has an ending point here and an ending point there. It doesn't keep going forever. This has arrows on it. It keeps going in both directions forever and ever and ever. So we call that one a line. And what's the name of this line? Well, it's line CA or AC. And when I write it, I make the little mark above it that shows that it's a line that keeps going in both directions. It has an arrow in both directions. So we call this line CA or line AC. That's the shorthand, the short way to write it. All right, let's make another line segment. So we need another point. I'm going to call it point. See here, let's make it over here. Let's make that point X. And if I connect C and X, so look, I put my pencil on the point. I lined up my book. I'm going to trace it straight across. Is this a line or a line segment? Look how it ends. It's a line segment. So we would call this CX. And it just has that straight line on top, no arrows. We don't really have to put the dots. I just do that just to remember that it ends. A line segment is just a little chunk of line. Line segments have endpoints. All right. We need to make another one of these. So let's look at our I Can. We've made some points. I've made a line. We made several line segments. We need to make a ray. Well, we're going to listen to a really great song in a few minutes, and you'll never forget the difference between a line and a ray. I'm going to start, let's see here. I'm going to make point K, and I'm going to put it coming over here. Here's point K. And I'm going to start at point A, and I'm going to connect it to point K. So I'm going to put my pencil on A, line up my straight edge. I'm tracing it over to K, but then I don't want to pick up my pencil. I want to keep going in only one direction. It starts at A, it goes to K, but then it keeps going. This is an example of a ray. Think about a ray of sunshine. It starts in the middle of the sun and it comes out in one direction. This is a ray, and we call this ray A, K, with the arrow closest to the letter that had the arrow. I called this AK, and this is AK. The arrow's closest to the K, so the arrow is closest to the K. Could I call this KA with the arrow over here? No, because there's no arrow by the A. This is a line that's on a whole different area. We're just looking at this little segment right here. This is a line segment, and with that little end, it makes it a ray. So this is a ray. Now, we're going to use this space. I'm going to make another shape down here. We're going to label 3 points. A, B, C. Okay, so I just made 3 points, A, B, C. I'm going to put my pencil on B, and I'm going to connect it out to A, and I'm going to extend it to make a ray, so it goes farther than A. Then I'm going to come back to B, and I'm going to extend it past point C. Now it looks like part from our hungry alligator, right? The hungry alligator eats the number that's greater. This is an angle, and this angle has a name. We call this angle A, B, C. A, B, C. Now I could call this angle C, B, A. An angle is an opening that measures a certain number of degrees, and we'll get into that in a couple of days, not necessarily today. But something I want you to notice, do you notice whether or not I say ABC or CBA? Did you notice that the B is always in the middle? This was always in the middle, that point. Well, that point has a special name. B is the vertex. The vertex is the midpoint. So even if I found a different angle, I could make up an angle. So it's not one that you necessarily know, and it's not one that we've written down. I'm going to tell you, I'll use my initials. Nope, I'll have to use somebody else's initials. Let's see here. T, H, J. That's my angle, T, H, J. I could call the angle J, H, T. Because either way I looked at it, do you see how the H is always in the middle? That H in this example is the vertex. It's the one point that both of the rays come out of. So if I were to start this, if I wanted to draw THJ, I would come over here and I would make a T. I could make an H and I could make a J. And I know that I have to touch in that order. So I'm using my straight edge. Remember, we're not making this up. H is our vertex, so they both have to come out of the H and point away from it. T, H, then it's got to come down here and touch J. T, H, J. H is my vertex because it's the point that both of the other rays come out of. This is an example of an angle. And this is an example of an angle. You can see that this alligator opening is smaller and this alligator opening is really big, right? So angles have different sizes. And we'll get into that some more tomorrow. Let's do 2 more pictures just so we can make sure that we know what we're talking about. I'm going to draw a picture of a rectangle. I'm on the top of my next page so I don't run out of room. I'm going to use my straight edge to draw my rectangle. Let's see here. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm trying to line it up on the lines best I can. And when I use a straight edge, my notes look so much neater than if I was just trying to scrabble them. If you had a ruler, you could definitely use a ruler. But I want to make sure we have something everybody can use. So this is a rectangle. We could call each of the corners a vertex because it's the point that the line segment comes out of. So I'm going to call this A, B, C, D. And I could say, how many points are there? Well, there are 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I could ask you to give me one of the line segments. Well, if I was talking about segment AC, I would be talking about this side. If I was talking about line segment BD, I would be talking about this side. If I was talking about line segment CD, I would be talking about this side. And if I was talking about line segment AB, I would be talking about this line segment. So see how it's helpful to have a name? Let me zoom in a little. There we go. A little bit easier to see. All right. Well, let's talk about this shape real quick. We learned a word. If I'm talking about this side over here and this side, what is the word that means that something's across from it? If you said opposite, you're exactly right. Opposite means across from. I almost misspelled across. Let's fix that. So these pink sides are opposite each other. They are across from each other. These orange sides are opposite each other. They're across from each other. So I could say AC is opposite BD. AC is opposite BD. I could also say AB is opposite. What is AB across from? CD. Good. So that's what opposite means. Opposite's an important word. Now there's another word, a very fancy word that we've talked about before that means right next to something else. And so we talked about, if you got a hotel room and you wanted to take the subway, you could call the hotel and say, "Hi, is your hotel adjacent to the subway?" If something is right next to something else, look at these purple sides. You say these sides are adjacent to each other. Let's write the word again. The word is ADJACENT. We say adjacent. Adjacent is a fancy word for next to. When we're in school and you sit in the lunchroom, you sit adjacent to someone in the cafeteria, right next to someone. You also sit opposite someone, right across from someone at the lunch table. Adjacent means next to. So which 2 sides here are adjacent to each other? AB, line segment AB, is adjacent to BD. AB, BD. They're adjacent to each other because they're right next to each other. They're just about touching. Now, there's one other set of sides. Actually, there are several that we could use. We're just going to use this one for now. I know it's a little bit light. I think you can still see it. Which two sides am I talking about with the yellow marker being adjacent to each other? AC is adjacent to CD. Adjacent just means they're right next to each other. All right, so in a rectangle, we have some rules. We say, only in a rectangle, that opposite sides are equal. That makes sense, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like the pink side would be equal to the purple side? Yeah, so we say opposite sides are equal. This purple side would be equal to that pink side. And in a rectangle, adjacent sides are not equal. They would be equal if it was a different shape, but not a rectangle. The adjacent sides are not equal. This side is much shorter than that side. Okay, let's draw one more shape. Last shape of the day. I got just enough space for it down here. We're going to label 5 points. I'm going to start with a line across on one of my blue lines. I'm going to go from point to point. There we go. We'll call this A, and I'll call this B. And now I'm going to make a line right down the center, a line segment. So it's just going to be a piece of a line, right? Not going to go on forever and ever. I'm going to tell you the top part is B, and this part is E. And this point right in the middle where everything crosses each other, we'll call that D. So right now, if I asked you to label my points, what are the name of my points? I have point A, B, E, D, and wait a second, I used B twice. Can't do that, Miss Kirsten. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna leave B there. I'm gonna change this one on the side. I'll make this one C. And C. Those are my points. Now, if I connect some of these, I could make some line segments. So I'm gonna connect A to B. Does this make a line or a line segment? It makes a line segment. It's just a chunk of a line. So I have line segments, AB. And now, of course, if I don't want to write out the words line segment, I could just use the shorthand with a little notation above it. I'm going to connect A and E. AE is a line segment. We know it's a line segment because I put the little symbol above it. I'm going to connect C with E. And I know that's a line segment because they start at both endpoints and end at both endpoints. And lastly, I'm going to connect B with C. And I take my time and line them up so my notes look nice and neat. These are all of my line segments. Now, who thinks they could change one of these into a ray? There's something we would have to do to make it a ray. What would I have to do? Great idea. I'm going to extend this line segment so it comes outside of my shape, and I have to add an arrow on the end. Now I have an example of a ray. This is ray DC. And the arrow has to go closer to the letter that's closer to the arrow. So it has to be DC. Could I call this ray CD? No, because there's no arrow near the D. So ray DC. Could anybody make another ray? Sure, you can make it coming right out of the top. It looks like a kite, doesn't it? All right, if I extend my line, I have another ray, and this one's name is ray D B. And I put the arrow on the top, only going in one direction because my arrow only goes in one direction. My arrow's closer to the B because the arrowhead is closer to the B. And now I've made 2 more rays. So I have points, I have line segments, I have rays. What can I do to turn something on my picture into a line? You said extend it down. You are absolutely right. I need this line going in both directions. And if I extend my line in both directions, suddenly I have an arrow at the top and an arrow on the bottom. This looks like it goes on and on forever. This is a line, B, E. And I'm going to put an arrowhead at both ends of my shape because BE has an arrow at both ends. That's how we know it's a line. This is line BE. So this is a line and this is a ray. And this is a line and this is a ray, and lines go forever in opposite directions. So please listen to the song and you will understand what we are talking about. Work hard, take your time. Please make sure your notes are careful, and have a great day.